Hello everyone, welcome back to another video with On Point Politics, your number one stop for all things polling and election analysis in the United States. And today we're going to be looking at the latest polling averages for the 2024 election across the battleground states. And I'm going to break down why these polls are going to be sort of inaccurate and why they may be underestimating Trump a third time. So make sure to like the video and to subscribe if you want more content just like this. And now we're going to get straight into the map. So what I'm going to do right now is we're going to see what all these states in yellow are in the polling averages, and then we're going to pull up the previous average from 2020, go to that current date, and show how inaccurate they were or accurate they were compared to the state's margin from the 2020 election. So the first state is the state of Nevada. So right now, if we go to the state of Nevada, we clearly see that right now Trump is ahead by a point in the average. And if we go to 2020, if we go all the way to August 18th, Joe Biden was actually leading by 6.7 percentage points. And he only won the state by 2.4% that cycle. So that's over a 4-point miss in the polling data. So if you were to actually apply the polling error from the last election, you would actually end up getting a likely margin, a little bit over a 5-point victory for Donald Trump in the state of Nevada. And just to let you guys know, this is not an official prediction. This is merely what the latest polling averages show for these battleground states and how off the last polling averages were and what the result would be for this cycle. So currently right now, Donald Trump would actually be winning Nevada by a little bit over 5 points right now, according to the polling error. Looking at the state of Arizona, right now in the average, Harris is actually, I believe Harris is up. Yes, she's up by 1.3%. And if we look at the last aggregate, Joe Biden was up by 2.6%. That's around a 2.3 percentage point miss because Joe Biden actually only won the state by 0.3% in the last cycle. So if we were to apply that polling error to this new average, we'd actually see that Donald Trump would be winning the state of Arizona by a little bit over a point in this forecast. So he'd still be holding on to Arizona. And actually a 1.3 percentage point victory is right around where I have the state in my model. So that is fairly interesting. Looking at the state of New Mexico, we only have about one poll, which does include third parties, and it has Harris up by 7. If we go to 2020, the average was off there by about roughly, about a point or so. So a 6-point victory would be on the horizon, which is very similar to what my election model shows as well. So again, that is also fairly interesting. Looking at the state of Georgia, we can actually see that Biden was ahead by 1.2%. He only won it by 0.2%. So it is going to be around a little bit of a 1-point error or so. And if we go to the latest poll, we actually see Trump is ahead by 1 point in the average. So a 2-point victory with the polling error would be on the horizon once you apply it. Looking at North Carolina, you're going to see a very similar story. Donald Trump is up in the state by 0.4%, but when you look at the polling average, Biden was ahead by 1.8, and if you actually go back to August 18th, he was ahead by 1.3. Donald Trump won the state by 1.3 percentage points. So that's actually like basically a 2.6 percentage point polling miss. So that actually puts the state a little bit of above a 2-point victory, which again, I have the state as a 2.1 percentage point win. That polling error would be around 2.6, 2.7. So again, my model, which does not include, manually plugged in polling errors, does show a very similar victory to what my election model has. Looking at the state of Virginia, this is kind of fascinating because the latest data actually has Harris doing pretty bad in the state. She's actually probably down in the average, and Trump was actually underestimated in the average by almost 2 points. So if you were to actually go ahead and apply that, you would possibly see a lead margin for Trump in Virginia, which is pretty interesting, and he's up by 281 electoral college votes now, which does give him an electoral college victory. Looking at the state of Minnesota, you'll see if you were to average out the latest polls from that cycle, you would actually see that Harris would more than likely be up in an average by maybe 7 to 8 points, possibly even a little bit more, maybe like 8 points. But if you look at the average for the last cycle, Harris was up by 9, or Biden was up by 9.2%. He ended up winning it by 7.1. So if the average is around 8 for Harris, she probably wins it by about 6, which is literally a point off from the margin I have. I have Biden winning the state by 5.3% in my model. So it's quite funny that all the polling averages and all the polling errors are showing something fairly similar. That's very, very interesting. That the fact that when you apply the polling error from the previous cycle to the latest averages, it shows margins that are fairly similar to my election model. Looking at the state of New Hampshire, we'll actually see that Harris or Biden was actually up by 11.1%. He only won the state by 7.4, so that's like a 4-point miss there. And if you look at the aggregate now, you'd see that Harris would probably be up by possibly 6 points in an average. So that also means that, it's only a 2-point victory, which is a little bit lower than what my model does have. Looking at Maine at large, you see a very similar story where, right now Harris would probably be up in the state by possibly, 8 points in an average. And if you looked at the last cycle, Harris was up here by Biden was up here by 13 points. He only won the state by 9, so that does show about a 4-point win. And it's pretty interesting because I have been suspecting Minnesota to vote to the left of Maine at large and New Hampshire in the future, but it's possible that may even happen this cycle. And now with the Rust Belt, Wisconsin's polling errors are abysmal, guys. You're talking about Biden being ahead by 8 points in the average and only winning the race by 0.6% in the election, and they're getting excited over a 3-point lead for Harris here. That is like a 8-point miss in the polling aggregate, like a 7.5-point polling miss. So if you were to actually apply that to this, Trump would actually be up in the state by about 3.9, to 4 points ish. That's what he would be up there. Looking at Michigan, this is also fairly interesting, but Harris is up by 2.6, but the average had Harris up by 7.9 and Biden up by 7.9, and he won the state by 2.8. That's a 5.1 percentage point polling miss. So if you were to apply that to this, Harris would be up in the state of Michigan by about 3 points, or Trump would be up by 3 points in the state of Michigan. And then now looking at Pennsylvania, which is the final state on here, you actually see Harris is up in the average by 1.4, but you see that the average overestimated Biden by 1.2. Well, he won by 1.2%, but he was up by 4.7, so that's like a 3.5 point polling miss. So if you were to apply that to this, Trump would be up in the state by 2 to 3, similar to Michigan. So when you look at the latest averages and apply the previous polling errors, Trump is still ahead in the Electoral College very easily. Even if we were to give Virginia, Trump is still up, and this is only a state off from my actual forecast. So that's very, very interesting. Michigan and Virginia are the only states that are differing from the forecast. Maybe newer data out of Virginia would be more favorable to Harris. So just to be fair, we'll give Virginia to Harris. Trump's still up 312 when you apply the polling errors from the previous aggregates. So if you guys did enjoy this, make sure to hit the like button and to subscribe for more content just like this. And I will see you guys in the next video.